Alrighty. Let's talk about resurrection. Ironically, a subject that I don't think that we talk about enough. We talk about the death of Jesus, usually abstracted from the means by which he died, crucifixion. We tend not to talk about Jesus as Messiah, and the resurrection often gets left out there. But remember, the proclamation of the gospel in Acts is the crucified Messiah vindicated from his enemies through the resurrection, by his resurrection and exaltation to the right hand of God. That's essentially the proclamation of the gospel in Acts. And so, why did I have Luke 4 up? Oh yeah, we'll get to that. Never mind. So we're going to talk about that again in a little bit. Another thing I want to just mention. I was looking at, I don't know what, images of Roman roads this morning. And I went back to this. I talked at another church. I don't call it a sermon because it's not preaching, whatever you want to call that. Being in front of a church a couple of months ago, and I did a being in front of the church thing, in which I talked about the Hellenistic advance of Acts, and the importance of what's often called today the Pax Romana, the Roman peace, and its various and sundry elements, which is just my collection of some of them. But I was thinking about this road situation, and it's interesting. So here's the Roman Empire. This is bigger than the Roman Empire. The Roman Empire kind of ended here because these are the Germanic. This is as north of the Danube. They stayed away from. And they didn't go down into sub-Saharan Africa either. So it's basically around the Mediterranean basin. Anyway, these are some of the Roman roads. And this is so important for this Pax Romana, this Roman peace. And the reason the Roman peace matters is because without it, there would not have been a Hellenistic advance of the gospel in the first century AD. I mean, it's all comes together. Somebody said, was that you that said coincidence? The stunning set of coincidences that brings about a world in which a man like Paul can just basically walk wherever he wants and ride a ship wherever he wants and proclaim the gospel wherever he wants. He gets chased out of a lot of synagogues, but that's because of the Jews. Anyway, under the protection of Roman law. And so these are Roman roads. And here's Jerusalem down here. And so the point is, he is going to, after he's in Jerusalem, he's going to Rome. He thought he was going to go to Rome in his own way, but it turns out he's going to go to Rome because he has to appeal to Caesar to keep from ending up back in Jerusalem, where he'd probably be executed or stoned or something. But look at this. So here's Antioch up here. Here's the port, Seleucia. Here's Tyre. It's another port city. So from Tyre, using these commercial shipping routes, which are safe because of the Pax Romana, piracy and so forth, you can get from Tyre to Ephesus. What is that? 800 miles? I don't know. Here's the there's 0.6 of a mile to a kilometer. So, it's about 600 miles. I think that's right. So, it's this trip right here, which he made more than once. So he wants to go to Rome and then get financial support and so on and so forth, so he can make his way to Spain and start a new missionary endeavor. And you think, ooh, that's a long ways away. But Pax Romana, look at this. That's from Rome. That's from Rome to Spain, right there. It's like 600 miles. It's a shorter distance than from Tyre to Ephesus, which he did several times. So once he gets to Rome, Pax Romana, he's on his way. It's just a question of how he's going to get to Rome. And it turns out he's going to get to Rome by being under arrest. That trip to Rome from here to here is going to be far longer, both in nautical miles and in time, than the trip from Rome to Spain. But anyway, the point is, it's an extraordinary thing that you can walk from Jerusalem. Jerusalem is right here. From Jerusalem, you could walk, technically, from Jerusalem to Spain safely on well-kept roads and encounter people all the way that speak the same language as you do. Greek, Koine Greek, not coincidentally, the language of the New Testament, the language in which every book of the New Testament was written. So all of these people that we're dealing with here in these two books, Luke and Acts, probably spoke Greek. Whether Jesus did, we don't know. But because there's no reason to know. Nobody cares. So anyway, how do we know about all these roads? I mean, are they just guessing about these roads? And the answer is no. We can see them on satellite imagery. And as you can see, it's the red things. They can see them on satellite imagery and you can draw them out. And that's how vast. The Roman Empire, of course, was not this big. These are Germanic areas here. But you can just see how the Roman Empire was just littered with well-kept roads, many of which survive today. But if you get high enough, it's interesting, you get high enough, I've seen pictures of it, you can actually see where the roads used to be, or the outlines of them. Just like you can see where the two walls that Gaius Julius Caesar built in Gaul when he had Vercingetorix on the hill. So he built a wall so they couldn't get out. And then they were going to get attacked by more Gauls from outside. So they built another wall inside of them. So the Romans were now inside of two walls around this city that they were going to assault. So they beat the people that were attacking them on the other side of the wall. And then they starved out the people on the inner wall because they couldn't get. Anyway, the point is not the brutality of it. The point is you can still see those walls. If you get high enough and look at the pictures, you can still see those walls. Yeah. Yeah. It's, yeah. So I have to guess at this. I mean, anyway, this to me, well, different people see different things when they see, for example, the Roman road network. But what I see is the advance of the gospel. It's an extraordinary thing. It all comes together in the 1st century AD, just in time service for what these people are going to be doing in the 50s AD. And that's the record of Acts, all the travels of these people over here. And then over here, they're going to be in Asia. So here's Galatia, here's Cilicia, Galatia, Asia, Macedonia, Achaia. That's going to be the territory of the propagation of the Gospels, courtesy of the Romans. And then by language, courtesy of the Greeks hundreds of years earlier. It's an extraordinary. What's that? Yeah, I think the point of the yellow, and there's a lot of these. So you have these coasting vessels. You could get along the coast, you could get places real quick because they have these commercial vessels. They would never go in the open sea. They would just travel port to port down the coast. So if you were here, if you couldn't catch a ride on an open sea commercial vessel like they did in Acts, Luke points that out, you could take a coasting vessel all the way around the coast and never hit the open sea. So you could do it 2 or 3 different ways. It's, what I call 1st century hitchhiking. That's what they were doing. You catch you catch the taxi here and here and here. You wait for one for 5 days there, and then you pick one up, and yeah, it's extraordinary. Okay, so that's the Pax Romana, creating the intersection of the Pax Romana and the birth of Christianity and the Hellenistic advance of the gospel around the eastern provinces. Now you know why I talk about it so much. It really is an amazing, it's buried treasure in the study of the New Testament, in my view. All comes to a head right here. It's no coincidence that all the green cities are right here in the 50s. When you can travel to all those cities quickly, cheaply, safely, and effectively, if you want to preach the gospel in Greek. So that's that. That was helpful. If not, it's done. What's done is done. Okay, let's get back to the resurrection or Paul's statement about himself. So he spends the first, who is Paul standing before now at this point? Agrippa the first or second? Agrippa the second. He's got a sister named Bernice. Close. Beatrice is the girl in Kill Bill. Anyway. That's just Beatrix. But anyway, so yeah, you got Agrippa, who is the son of Agrippa the first, who I think is the son of Aristobulus, who was murdered by his father, Herod the Great. So you're several generations down now, still in the Herodian dynasty of control over some parts or all of Palestine. And so Agrippa, for our purposes, is from Galilee. He's the tetrarch of Galilee. He's being given the title of king here, but technically, I guess he wouldn't be a king. The province of Judea is under Roman control, direct Roman control. It's a Roman province. So who is the governor of Judea? Festus, right here. So it's Festus who's at a loss for words and action, and he has no path forward with Paul. So here comes Agrippa II, who comes in to greet him because Festus is the new governor. So, it's the meet and greet thing. So he's going to come and shake hands with him, as does everybody else. And while he's there, he takes advantage of the opportunity to ask Agrippa to do him a favor and help him with this problem that Felix left him 2 years earlier in the person of a Roman named Paul, who for some reason that he can't figure out, his countrymen in Jerusalem want to murder. So he didn't know what to do. So Paul doesn't want to go back to Jerusalem. Obviously, Agrippa II wants to send him back to Jerusalem. So Paul appeals to Caesar, which a person is allowed to do as a Roman. And once he does that, the local magistrates are hands off. It protects Romans. They were real serious about their justice and about being Roman. It protects the Roman from the arbitrary exercise of power, exactly like this, that Festus probably would have exercised in just sending him back to Jerusalem. Which is the arbitrary, basically just delivering this Roman to the angry local mob. And so he is not going to let that happen. He's already been told by Jesus himself, standing at his side when he was having a vision, that he would go to Rome and testify about him there. So he knows that's going to happen. Now he has appealed to Caesar, which means a trip to Rome. He knows that. And so here comes Festus Agrippa, because I don't know what to write to Caesar. It's Caesar, right? Claudius Lysias, the Tribune, pawned him off on me with a letter. I don't really know what to do with this guy, but I can't do that with Caesar. I need some real charges here, but I don't have any Roman charges to bring this guy up on. So maybe you can, I can't even figure out what on earth is going on here. So maybe as a Jew, Agrippa II, you can listen in and use your Jewish sensibilities and figure out what the fight is here. So that's what's going on. Paul is now speaking in front of Agrippa. He's calling him king, being probably very aware that in just a minute, he's going to refer to Jesus as the Christ, which is to say a king. So there's that little political undertone going on here as well. So he refers to King Agrippa as king, I think at least 3 times in this narrative. My hunch would be so that when he gets around to mentioning the Christ who is to suffer, he can't be accused of, he doesn't give them their charge, some kind of treason charge, because he called Jesus a Messiah, a messianic figure, a king. I don't know. But it's all kind of guesswork because this is all we get. We just get this narrative here. So he spends the first this many verses, great sentence, Gary, describing his life before he was a Christian. That's all the blue. So he's defending his devout Orthodox Jewishness before he was a Christian, a disciple of this crucified Messiah, to King Agrippa. So Agrippa understands, I was no heretic. I was, in fact, way above my contemporaries, as he describes someplace else, in my zeal for the law and for the Mosaic customs, as all these people will testify to, because some of them knew me back in the day. In fact, that's why they're so upset. So now he's going to, because of the he's considered a traitor to the cause. So now he's going to get into his conversion experience. It will be the third time that his conversion experience is recited in the book of Acts, twice by him, once by Luke. Just based on text alone, you can say that it's the most important event in Acts, recited in Acts, the conversion of Paul. Does it really need to be said three times? I don't know. Apparently the inspired writer thought so. So he is now standing in front of kings and governors like he was told that he would do in his conversion. You will stand before kings and governors and the sons of Israel, kings and rulers and sons of Israel, I think it is. So this events of chapters 25 and 26 are exactly that, playing out according to the script of his conversion, which I'm sure was not lost on him. So if I got anything else on 9, 10. Yeah, okay. So let's just move on to 10 here. So he has this, he's just mentioned the resurrection. I think you can, why is it considered incredible among you people? That's the New American Standard doing that. Get rid of that word. Why is it considered incredible among you or by you if God raises the dead? Which is to say, why is it for you people that believe in resurrection? I mean, there's Pharisees all around who believe in resurrection. You claim to believe in resurrection. Why do you find it so incredible when that God might have actually already raised somebody from the dead? I mean, you hold these beliefs too. I'm not unique. I didn't innovate belief in the resurrection of the dead. The Pharisees and the Pharisaical sect, the people who believe along those lines are all over the place. Maybe Agrippa is one of them, if he cares. But at any rate, I think that's probably what's behind this. People claim to believe in resurrection, but when somebody comes along and says that it happened, you find it incredulous. So then I thought to myself that I had to do many things hostile to the name of Jesus of Nazareth. That's what Jesus calls himself out of Paul's mouth in his previous recitation of his conversion of Nazareth. This is just what I did in Jerusalem. Not only did I lock up many of the saints in prisons, insider language, Jewish language right there, saints, having received authority from the chief priests, but also when they, the saints, were being put to death, I cast my vote against them. We don't know what that means. Was that an official vote or is it just a way of saying I agreed with them or something like that? Because he's a young guy back then. I don't know what the pastor thinks about that, but he has no trouble saying it in front of all these people. So that would be a test of your orthodoxy, right? Your willingness to basically exterminate, stamp out this new sect of Judaism. You have Sadducees who accept the first 5 books of the Bible, of the Old Testament, and that's it, and do not believe in a resurrection or angels or an afterlife or any of that stuff. Then you have Pharisees who accept all of that and believe in all the books we have in our Old Testament. Then you have, for example, Essenes, who are a sort of apocalyptic group that retreated from society and lived along the coast of the Dead Sea, I think on the southeastern coast of the Dead Sea. I remember for sure.
I'm just thinking that 9 through 11 is an explanation of Acts chapter 9, when he said he was breathing out, threatening to
Yes.
slaughter. This is
Yeah, that's Paul. That's Luke's own subjective assessment of Paul's mental state
this is right up the alley.
at the time that the conversion happened. And now we have Paul's validation of that description of his mental state 25 years later with Luke present. He's here. He accompanied Paul to Jerusalem. He has an awfully intimate knowledge of these events. It's not a we section. He doesn't say we went to Caesarea, but man, he either was there or he certainly had direct access to people that were. But anyway, I agree with Brian. Now Paul uses different language to describe them, the same mindset. And I use the word animalistic. Rabid dog. I mean, his demeanor, his posture towards the Christians was animalistic. He describes it almost as a loss of mental faculty due to rage. He's so enraged against these people that he can't think straight. And it's almost like the vision cleared his mind or something like that. The fever broke when he saw the resurrected Jesus and he saw things clearly again. That's how he seems to be describing the event. Furiously enraged. I tried to force them to blaspheme, and being furiously enraged, insane with anger, I pursued them even to foreign cities. And then he's going to take up now. That's when the Christ appeared to me, in my pursuit of them in the foreign city. So he's going to get to Damascus at this point, which is the first and only foreign city where he pursues the disciples in Acts. He uses the plural. So obviously there were other foreign cities that he pursued these disciples in, but Luke is not interested in them in the story in Acts. Speaking of the word saints, which he's using in the narrative to address Christians as his fellow disciples. Christian is not their insider term. Christian is a term that was a derogatory term that was used of them. Luke says earlier at the beginning of the missionary journeys of Paul that the disciples were first called Christians in Antioch. He does not say the disciples first started calling themselves Christians. They called people probably hostile to them, called them Christians. They refer to themselves in the words that we see here, disciples or saints or that sort of thing. That's how I understand it. And so here they're saints, which is insider Jewish terminology. Paul uses the term saints. You know, if you wonder how much of him was Jewish, the answer is 100%. He uses the term saints in reference to the Christians in his letters 37 times. To the saints who are at Philippi or whatever, you know. I think I wrote that down. He uses the word, he describes them as saints. He addresses the saints, even the ones he's never met, like the Roman ones, in 5 different letters in the introductory statement. To the saints who are called as saints, beloved of God in Rome, grace to you and peace from God our Father and the Lord Jesus Christ. So from one saint to another, across the aisle, across the sea, to the Gentile saints, he extends greetings and may the grace and peace of God be with you, and so on and so forth. That's all wrapped up in that word saint, which he uses here in front of Agrippa. So let's talk about this blaspheming right here. Interesting choice of word, very insider, right? Jesus was accused of blasphemy. Stephen was accused of blasphemy. Probably Peter was as well. And now Paul is accusing himself of blasphemy. What was blasphemous? He was simply doing what he thought he was called upon as a Jew, as an Orthodox Jew. He thought he was acting in accordance as an Orthodox Jew. Now he says he was blaspheming. And the answer is he was denying, this is my take, he was denying the resurrection. He was repudiating the resurrection of the Christ appointed for Israel. That was the blasphemy. The Messiah. This was a messianic figure that God himself had anointed with power and had authenticated by various signs and wonders and so forth. And had raised him from the dead. And so by virtue of locking up the saints in prison, he was repudiating the Messiah chosen by God and now vindicated through the resurrection of the dead and exaltation to the right hand of God. Something like that is going on. And so that idea of vindication, that's one of the most important elements of the resurrection story. It's not just the defeat of death. In the story of Acts, you don't see a theology of the defeat of death through the resurrection of Jesus. You see that in the letters of Paul. That is, in my view, another example of supernatural revelation. But for the supernatural revelation given to men like Paul, we would not understand that the resurrection of Jesus represented the defeat of death. But we have the event, and we have the preaching of it in the synagogues and in the marketplaces that these people went to. And here Peter is standing before the council. All three of them stood before the council, four of them. Jesus, who was silent, Peter, who preached the gospel and went on the attack, Stephen, who simply went on the attack, and then Paul now, who's actually defending himself and also preaching the gospel, which is what he's going to do before Agrippa. So here it is. Here's the vindication element of the gospel. Jesus, he's talking to the council. He knows full well that he could get the same, they could do the same thing to him roughly that they did to Jesus, if not crucifixion, at least death by stoning. Jesus Christ, the Nazarene, he calls him, as Jesus called himself in the vision to Paul, whom you crucified, but who God vindicated when he raised him from the dead. There, right there is. The juxtaposition of these two things, that's a great word, isn't it? Juxtaposition, 5 syllables right there. Juxtaposition. The putting of two things side by side and making them related that way. Sounds better when I just say juxtaposition. Right here. Vindication, that's the point. You crucified him, but God vindicated him by raising him from. He undid what you did. He reversed. It's the great reversal. There's 2 great reversals in the story of in the life and times of Jesus. The first is God defeated death by dying. Get a handle on that. And rising from the dead. And in the rising from the dead, he nullified his enemies, one of which is death, but another of which is standing right in front of him. I wrapped all that up and I call it the great reversal. So that's what I mean by that. That's its own little sermon, the great reversal, which I've given. 3 different churches, and in this church twice, I think.
And when Paul describes himself as being adamant against the Christians, is he condemning or pointing out people who are accusing him now of having the same enragement at him, and that this was a little overboard? I went overboard persecuting all these people, and they're doing the same thing. It's the same mindset. That I would be doing the same thing they're doing, except.
He is certainly saying that. But for the mind clearing vision, he's about to narrate.
Trying to say.
Jesus nullified my attack against him. And the only difference between me and him is they're continuing on with it. These people right here, they're in the mindset that I used to be in, but I had the mind clearing vision. To no credit to me. They don't. Who is he talking to? Who is Paul talking to right now? No. He's talking to Agrippa. Why is he talking to Agrippa? Because the Romans can't figure this nonsense out. And so now when Paul speaks to Romans, he speaks about Roman stuff. Paul says to Festus in the last chapter, I have violated no law, no Roman law. They can't prove any of the charges of which they've accused me. That's what he says to the Roman. Now he's speaking to the Jew, Agrippa, so he speaks in Jewish language. And he needs to defend himself against the charge that he's a violator of Jewish tradition. Is it what? He's well educated. Remember, brought up in Jerusalem, educated at the feet of a leading Pharisaical Jew, probably going to be, if not a member of the school of Hillel, on his way. Family is probably aristocratic Romans from who knows when, before he was born. So speaks at least 2 languages here, Aramaic and Greek. Maybe Hebrew, although we don't have any evidence of that here. But I would assume that if you're a doctor of the law, you know both Aramaic, which is sort of the common vernacular of the eastern part of the Roman Empire, not just in Palestine, but also in these northern provinces. We'll do it. No, I'm sorry, the area is just north of Palestine. They spoke Aramaic there. He's going to head out to the Greek speaking provinces. But anyway, that's a common vernacular language. And then there was the Hebrew as well, which he probably knew as well. Plus, who knows what else? What else did they speak in Cilicia when he was growing up? It's a cosmopolitan empire. There's people coming from all over the place. So does that, I don't know. We saw all kinds of speculation about it, about what exactly was going in his mind. My hunch is he's single-mindedly focused on winning over Agrippa. When he was trying to win over the Roman, all he had to do was say, I didn't violate any law, and you know it. But now with the Jew, he's got to convince him I was a devout Jew, obedient to the Mosaic traditions, and I am a devout Jew. Still, even though I have embraced this Messiah, that's what he has to convince Agrippa of, at least to the extent of I haven't done anything wrong. We already, Paul could say, look, we already have Pharisees who believe in the resurrection. So what you're saying is you can be a Pharisee and believe in resurrection as long as you're not a Pharisee who believes that a resurrection already happened. That doesn't make any sense at all, which I think is practically what he's saying right here. The only difference between me as a Pharisee and these others as a Pharisee is I think he already did it once. I think that's what's going on here. This is all we get. It's a little bit of scroll. Okay. So that's blasphemy, apostasy. Apostasy is the rejection of the resurrected Messiah, period, in the Christian mind now. If you think of obedience to the law as being replaced by faith in Christ, that's a little simplistic, but I'll go with it to a certain extent. Then now blasphemy is the repudiation of the resurrected Messiah. So here we go with the conversion experience. So did he violate any Roman laws as he speaks in a very Jewish tone to the king, King Agrippa, while so engaged, while still in my fury that drove me virtually insane or something, as I was journeying to Damascus with the authority and commission of the chief priests, we need a map. Third journey. Here's Damascus, here's Jerusalem. So the point is, after the conversion of Samaria, this persecution broke out. Paul was a ringleader of some kind. And so the disciples here did something they never thought they'd do. They fled to Samaria. So the place that used to be a place that used to be considered defiling to even go to now becomes the refuge for these disciples, these Orthodox Jews. All of a sudden, Samaria. Oh, how about let's go to Samaria? So they go to Samaria. Samaria is converted, and they do what they do. They continue up the coast, and they eventually end up in Damascus. So here's Samaria right here, just north of Judea. They end up in Damascus, where they join the synagogue. They attach themselves to the synagogue because they're Jews. There's lots and lots of Jews in Damascus at this point. So Paul, being a Hellenistic Jew himself, wants no part of these Christians taking their infection, like a contagion, like a pathogen, and spreading it into these Hellenistic synagogues, around here. So he's going to get up on top of it and drive them down. That's why he wants to go, in my view, that's why he wants to go to Damascus. So off he goes. Very strategic. With the authority of the chief priests, at midday, O king, because he's about to get a vision from a king. So is there competition with Caesar here? Is there cause for treason? So before he gets to the vision that he's going to have with the king, a messianic ruler, he cuts in and refers to Agrippa as king. Let there be no doubt. I'm not challenging worldly authorities here. At midday, O king, I saw on the way a light from heaven, brighter than the sun, shining all around me and those who were journeying with me, who never get names. We never find out about these people. And when we, plural, had all fallen to the ground, I heard a voice saying to me in the Hebrew dialect, which is to say Aramaic, Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me? That's right from Acts 9. It is new information. It's hard for you to kick against the goads. So what's a goad?
It's, when they were using oxen and stuff, they would have sharp sticks going down to their feet so that when they kicked, they would get stabbed and then teach you not to kick.
I'll go with it. I forgot to look this up.
That's what a goad is.
It's pretty obvious that the phrase, whatever exact meaning has, its figurative meaning, it's going to be really hard for you to resist me. I'm going to get my way. Yeah, I ain't suffering anymore. I'm doing fine.
Used to, when I was in 4-H, I had a goat, kept a goat in my hand to get the cattle and put their feet in the right place. You just reach down there and you poke right in between their hoof, tender spot. They pick it up and put it back down somewhere else.
And I said, who are you, Lord? And the Lord, isn't that interesting? First person. Talking first person now. Who are you, Lord? I said, and the Lord said, so you see this immediate embrace of Jesus, whatever it is he thinks he's looking at, the immediate change, the immediate clarity of mind or something like that. I am Jesus whom you are persecuting. In the last telling, he was Jesus the Nazarene. He doesn't say that here. Probably because, so why wouldn't he? Well, it could be any number of reasons why he wouldn't say. Nazareth was in Galilee, which is a city in Agrippa's province. I don't know why. He doesn't include Nazarene there. Jesus whom you are persecuting, but get up, stand on your feet. For this purpose I've appeared to you, to appoint you a minister and a witness, not only to the things which you have seen, but also to the thing which is me, the resurrected Jesus, which you're watching right now, but also to the things in which I will appear to you. So there's plenty more to come, says Jesus to Paul. Although he doesn't tell him what, rescuing you from the Jewish people and from the Gentiles to whom I am sending you. So there's some new information in there too. In the original telling of his conversion, it was, I will show it to Ananias. Jesus says, I will show him how much he's going to suffer for my name's sake. So here he says, I'm going to rescue you from the Jewish people and from the Gentiles. So he's going to rescue him. Paul won't be killed, but that doesn't mean he's not going to suffer. On the contrary, Paul himself said, he testifies to me in every city that he testifies to me that bonds and afflictions await me everywhere that I go. That was simply Paul's life. Tough life. To open their eyes so that they may turn from darkness to light and from the dominion of Satan to God, very Jewish language here, that they may receive forgiveness of sins and an inheritance among those who have been sanctified by faith in me. There it is. The gospel of faith, which is a little bit obscure in Acts. There's no articulation of the gospel in Acts as the gospel. There's simply the proclamation. Proclamations are tailored to the people that you're talking to. But at any rate, lots and lots of times when people are converted, it says that they believed. Here you have this very Jewish language now applied to the receiving this dynamic of conversion, which is happening to Paul right in front of his own eyes. He is being converted to faith in Jesus. But Jesus is speaking to somebody about how this somebody is going to bring people to faith in him, as this person who is going to bring people to faith in him is brought to faith in him. So the conversion and the calling are all mixed together. They're fused together. They're inseparable. Paul, when you read Paul, you never you never see any kind of separation between his conversion experience and his call, his commission as apostle to the Gentiles. He was converted so that he might be sent to the Gentiles, and the Gentiles might be brought in. That's how closely intertwined these two things are. To be a disciple of Jesus in Paul's mind is to be the apostle to the Gentiles. Woe to me if I did not preach the gospel, says Paul at one point. All right. So these events right now that he's going through are the direct fulfillment of the prior telling by Luke. He is standing before a king and a governor, both, and the sons of Israel, testifying to the resurrected Jesus and his own commission to bring the gospel to the Gentiles, who he's now talking to. So I don't know what Festus thought of that. Festus knows that Jews don't like. Anti-Semitism was in the air in the first century. And one of the reasons it was in the air is particularly in Alexandria, which the New Testament doesn't talk about. Anti-Semitism was so profound in those areas precisely because Jews just did not associate with Gentiles. And the Gentiles knew it. And so anti-Semitism. So now you have this Roman Gentile, Festus, who's listening to this, and he hears this Jew, this Roman Jew, talking about how he's dedicated to the Gentiles as a Jew. It's an interesting dynamic that takes place here. So Jesus promised that he would be rescued, but he did not promise that he would rescue him from suffering. And so there's going to be a lot of that. Let's take a look at a couple of, where are we at? 12 through. Let's look at all these real quick. So this is Jeremiah's call. 7 and 8. See if it sounds familiar. Lord said to me, do not say I am a youth, because everywhere I send you, you shall go, and all that I command you, you shall speak. Do not be afraid of them, for I am with you to deliver you, declares the Lord. That was Jeremiah's. I suppose Paul took heart in the fact that God made promises to Paul of the sort that he made to the prophets. The part that's not comforting is, man, the prophets underwent a lot of suffering at the same time. I have put my words in your mouth. I have appointed you this day over the nations and over the end. Not really applicable. I've appointed you a prophet to the nations. Paul never calls himself a prophet. But anyway, that's Jeremiah. And there's Isaiah. What did I want here? Did I blew it? This is why I blew it. B-L-U-E. Forgot what I wanted to read. 1 through 7. Oh yeah. The people who walk in, look at the language here. So he says, to open their eyes, they may turn from darkness to light, the dominion of Satan to God, and so on and so forth. Receive forgiveness of sins and inheritance. People who walk in darkness will see a great light. Those who live in a dark land, the light will shine on them. This was also quoted by the gospel writers, more than one gospel. You shall multiply the nation, you shall increase their gladness. They will be glad in your presence as with the gladness of harvest, as men rejoice when they divide the spoil. The difference is Jews tended to apply this to themselves, but the scope was far larger than that. The people who walk in darkness, of course, are far more than just the Jews. They're the Gentile nations that God has his eye on. For you shall break the yoke of their burden and staff their shoulders, the rod of the oppressor as the battle of Midian. Let's see. Child would be born to us. So if Agrippa knows his Bible and he sees this reference to Isaiah chapter 9, verse 1, and he knows the whole section, he knows about the rest of this as well. A child will be born to us, a son will be given to us, the government will rest on his shoulders. That's how the darkness is eliminated and replaced with light. His name will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Eternal Father, Prince of Peace. No end to the increase of his government. Paul is walking right up to the edge here, right? This is messianic, kingly, royal language that is to be applied to Jesus. He's walking right up to the edge of it as he's talking to a king. They don't like that. After he's appealed to another king, the emperor, who's a king. Throne of David, so more throne language. You don't quote that. Seems to make reference to the darkness part, but he's going to leave off before he gets to the king part. Ephesians chapter 5, verses 6 through 9. Let no one deceive you with empty words. Because of these things, the wrath of God comes upon the sons of disobedience. What did I want on this? Oh, yeah. Do not be partakers with them. You were formerly darkness, but now you are light in the Lord. So you want to apply this in a sort of, as a principle, light and dark, don't lose the context. You're talking about a Jew here writing this who's very familiar with these passages like the one we just read. The people who walked in darkness have seen a great light. There's no way Paul says this without being aware of the prophecy in Isaiah 9, and therefore fulfillment among the Ephesians who were idol worshipers. And now their darkness has been replaced by light in fulfillment of the great the promises in books like Isaiah. That's how I read it. So then you get into the application. You were formerly darkness, but now you are light in the Lord. Walk as children of light. Learn what is pleasing to the Lord. Back to darkness. So that's the context for, I think, for darkness and light. It's not how we would be anachronistic to think of it the way that we think of darkness and light. Darkness is bad and you're blind, those kinds of things. And that's where evil is. And then you want to turn to light where the good is. None of that is false. I just don't think it's what he's talking about here. I think what he's talking about is you are the recipients of the promises made through the prophets centuries ago. Walk like it. That's what I think he's doing here. That's a study of Ephesians, which he's done already. That's very controversial. So be it. Great stuff to discuss, though. He rescued us. Here it is again. He rescued us from the domain of darkness, transferred us to the kingdom of his beloved Son, in whom we have redemption, the forgiveness of sins. If you go back to the Isaiah passage, which I closed, that talks about the forgiveness in there as well. And he does that here. Turn from darkness to light, from the dominion of Satan. Look at it, so much like Colossians, isn't it? They may receive forgiveness of sins and an inheritance among those who have been sanctified. He rescued us from the domain of darkness, transferred us to the kingdom of his beloved Son, in whom we have redemption, forgiveness of sins. Very, very close. Huh? Yes. Yeah. With John, it's a little harder to tell if he's actually is more dealing in the idea of light and darkness and the contrast between them. Even in the Gospel of John, the darkness and the light there's not a hint that he's making a reference to Isaiah. In there, he's making a reference to Genesis chapter 1, where there is darkness and then God calls the light into being. Yeah. Which is a good point for Bible study. Just because people use the same language and two different authors use the same language in two different books doesn't mean they mean the same thing. Just because an author uses the same language in two different books doesn't mean that he means the same thing. You just have to do a little bit of work. Yes. Yeah. It takes a lot of humility to study the Bible, because you have to let go, especially for a teacher. The teachers here know this. Boy, when something just offers itself up as a great sermon, you just really want to take the bait. It's just, the trouble is, it just may not be true. Or it may have nothing to do with that passage. And you gotta, maybe I can do that one, but I have to do it from some other. If I'm going to do the light and darkness thing, like the idea of light and darkness, I'm going to do it from John and probably not from Colossians. Yeah. 10:14. Jeremiah would only stop talking. Maybe I could get someone.
I know what you mean.
All right.
Ain't get a word in there.
We didn't get anywhere. I'm going to stop. I only got. No, I'm in 19 now, but yeah.
Claim Jesus, but there have been other groups that claim
Messianic fervor was in the air,
Still is.
was in the air.
And they didn't go after him.
They murdered him. Judas, like, that was the Egyptian, they didn't let him, he just escaped. They killed all his followers. Yeah, Judas the Galilean is the one that, Gamaliel talks about in Acts 3 or 4. They're all going, what are we gonna do with this guy? And Gamaliel says, I think we just let him go. Because, you know, you had Judas the Galilean who launched the revolt. When they got him, it was all put down. So, you know, be careful here, because lest you find yourself fighting against God. Something like that. So, yeah, but Messianic, that's part of the revolt, the revolutionary, the revolution was in the air, and it was building all throughout the 50s.
So the Romans are worried that it's gonna go that way.
I mean, if you're, both are, but if you're Festus, you're probably listening to this, and he's talking about some kind of messianic figure. So is he talking like a revolutionary thing here? This is where Paul could get in trouble in when he goes to Caesar. This is where Paul could have given Festus a charge that the Jews would have wanted, because he's walking right up to it now. He's beginning to talk about a resurrected Messiah figure. What he has to do is make sure that they understand he's not talking about a this worldly Messiah who's any threat. I'm a loyal Roman. That's what he has to keep in mind. That's what he has to keep front and center while he starts talking about this Messiah. And he's going to use the word Christ. So he did walk right up to the edge of it in my mind. All right. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and stop the stream. Thanks for joining. I think we had some, who do we have left here? We got, Naomi and Isabel. Nate, bye all. You guys still out there? There goes Isabel.
Yes.
All right. All I hear is a dog barking. Or